So, in a really big piece of news just reported by Brett Okamoto, Anthony Johnson, the former light heavyweight title challenger in the UFC, is deciding that he wants to make a comeback, and he's aiming for March of 2020. The idea being that 6 months in the testing pool would sort of put him in around March. Right now, we're at the end of August, so maybe things start in September. So you go September 1, October, November, December, January, February. That's 6 months right there, and then you end up in March right after that. And this is very big news for one, in part because he's a big name and it's good to have that kind of a guy back, but also because both the heavyweight and the light heavyweight division, he's looking to go back to heavyweight, or he's looking to go up to heavyweight. Both of these divisions are very shallow, and so having a guy like him in the division means that there's a decent chance if he strings together 1 or 2 wins in a row that he could be fighting for a title by the end of 2020. So this could be a potential title challenger just popping in right now that'll be coming back next year. So to go through the story, it says that he, who is 35 years old, intends to return to competition in 2020, according to his manager. The plan is for him to fight at heavyweight. We've seen some pictures of him lately around Bare Knuckle FC where he looks gigantic. So 205 might even be a little bit too much for him to make now at this point. Never mind the fact that he used to make 170. But it says that he and his team have already taken the USADA requirement into consideration. That's why they're targeting March 2020. He's interested in fighting ranked opponents like JDS and Alistair Overeem. By the time he gets back in 6 months, I'm sure those guys will still be ranked, but it'll be interesting to see where they're ranked at that point. I just mentioned the fact that he's fighting out of South Florida. He retired in April 2017 after losing to Daniel Cormier for the light heavyweight title. Had an old post on Instagram where it's saying that he will make his return to MMA and that he's interested in fighting John Jones. I don't know that him fighting at heavyweight makes the John Jones fight any more likely than it otherwise would have been. He might have to drop some weight and get to a point where he can make 205 again, because if he strings together some wins at heavyweight and is actually able to make it to 205, I could see that fight being made eventually, but as of right now, I don't know that I see that happening right away. But to look at the heavyweight rankings, I always talk about how shallow this division is. So let's look at who's ranked there. I guess we can go bottom to top or top to bottom. Let's just go top to bottom. So obviously, Stipe Miocic is the champion. He's a little bit older than Anthony Johnson. You have Daniel Cormier, who will not be around much longer. So even though Cormier holds 2 wins over Rumble, Cormier likely at most has 1 fight left if he isn't done already. Then we have Francis Ngannou, who is, I would imagine, has more muscle mass than Anthony Johnson, although they're both gigantic humans and both hit very strong. Although from a technical standpoint, Johnson's a much better wrestler than Ngannou is. Johnson also has better kicks than Ngannou has. Both punch extremely hard. From a technical standpoint, Johnson's probably a little bit better than that, but it's hard to really argue against what Ngannou's been able to do. So you'd figure from a comparable of who's in the division right now and who Johnson compares to, Ngannou seems to be a fair comparison, and he may or may not be fighting for a title in the next 6 months. So that's a good sign for Anthony Johnson. If Ngannou can do this well in this division, you would imagine Johnson can also find his way up in the top 2, top 3 pretty easily. Then you have JDS, a guy who he's talking about. JDS being top 3 is kind of crazy to me at this point. He is not the fighter he used to be, the fighter who was the former champion. That fighter used to string together a lot more combinations and be a lot more aggressive. This one seems to get a little bit skittish when he gets hit and doesn't like to string together combinations because he doesn't like getting hit or getting countered. So it's not that he's not an effective fighter, but he's not the fighter he used to be. I think a guy like Rumble, who would be willing to go after a guy like JDS, would be effective. I would have to pick Rumble to win that fight against JDS, and that may or may not be a reason why he wants the fight with JDS in the first place. Then we have Curtis Blades. That would be an interesting matchup for Rumble, given that Rumble is a decent wrestler himself. Would Curtis be able to play his game on Rumble? Would Rumble catch him coming in, sort of like Ngannou was able to do on Curtis Blades? Interesting match there. Again, he's going to be fighting in 6 months from now, so it's hard to really create matchups right now because you don't know where the division's going to be at that point. But that would be an interesting matchup to watch. Derek Lewis. I mean, after the Lewis and Ngannou fight, I don't know if anyone wants to put together Lewis Johnson, but that could be a mildly interesting fight if Johnson decides that he actually wants to wrestle there. He may be effective. He may be able to get Lewis down and be able to pound him out, but I don't know. That's a fighting style that Johnson would really go for. I think Johnson would rather just stand with him and hope for the best. Volkov, much longer fighter than Johnson, but I don't know that fight's going to happen. Then there's Overeem, who he's also talking about at number 7, who has been knocked out plenty. And after seeing the loss that he had to Ngannou, I don't know if it would be fair to him to put him up against Anthony Johnson and see what Rumble could do to him. But either way, I think what we're seeing out of these rankings here is that when Rumble does step into the heavyweight division, he has a case to be fighting against some of the top guys, and there's a really good case to say that he probably beats some of the top guys. So for him, he may be like 1 or 2 wins at heavyweight away from a title shot. So while that story isn't the biggest right now in August of 2019, come March, come April, maybe even a little later on in 2020, the fact that he's back could be a pretty big deal, and it could be leading into a pretty big title fight somewhere down the line.